Hello, friends, and welcome to our big announcement, our big reveal. I am so glad to have you here with me today. Thank you for spending a little bit of time with me today. Depending on where you are, it might be cold and a little snowy. It's kind of been doing that here in Pittsburgh. So here's hoping that this little bit of time we've carved out together today will be food for your soul in a couple of different ways. Now, I am not the kind of person to bury the lead. You all came here today in order to hear our big news, to hear our announcement. So I'm going to get right to that. What I want you to understand, though, is with Facebook Live, there is a bit of a delay. There's about a 12 to 15 second delay between when you post a comment and when I'm going to see it. So I would love to hear from you. Say hello in the comments. React to what you're hearing today. And I'm going to do my best to see you, to say hello, and to talk a little bit about this big announcement. So with that in mind, let me get right to the big news. I am thrilled to announce that beginning J321, January 3rd, 2021, we are going to be launching a weekly show for bosses designed to offer advice and encouragement for bosses at all levels. That weekly show will be produced and released as a weekly podcast, available wherever you listen to podcasts. We're going to be on Apple Podcasts. We're going to be on Google Play. We're going to be on Spotify. If you're not an experienced podcast listener, maybe this will be your first invitation to join us for podcasts. Now, this show is going to be for bosses. As you probably know, I am on a mission to fill workplaces with better bosses. And why? Because bosses matter. Ask anyone who's ever, had a job, whether their boss matters. We know that 75% of people who leave a job indicate that their boss is part or all of the reason why. People don't quit their jobs. They quit their bosses. Bosses matter. Look at any of the research on employee engagement and commitment and effort and quality and customer service. The single most influential factor? Bosses. The degree to which my direct supervisor is able to meet a complex set of emotional and psychological needs that I have as an employee. Bosses matter. Oh, and if you're here today because you are a boss, because you've been bossing for a long time or you're new to it, I want you to hear me say that bosses matter. If you are the kind of leader who shows up in the world with a sense of duty and obligation to support your employees, to create the conditions for them to thrive, if you feel called to serve and to get better and to give them all you've got, then you are a boss hero, and this show is for you. What we're really excited about is not only is this weekly podcast going to be available wherever podcasts are available, we're also going to simulcast it as a video show. That's right, it's going to also be published every week on YouTube. And I can see you all dropping a couple comments in the box here. I'm really excited that you are here with us today. And Jody says yay, and hi Jody, I say yay too. Jamie has her party emoji going. Keely says so exciting. I agree. What I want to do during our time together today is to preview a little bit for you what this podcast is going to be like. Now, if you're not an experienced podcast listener, don't worry, because we are going to teach you how to listen to podcasts. Before I get into a little preview of what this show is going to be about, there's something I want you to do. I want you, when we're done with this, or you can do it right now if you're on a computer and you've got the two browser windows going, I want you to head over to BossBetterNow.com and subscribe for podcast updates. Right in the middle of that page, there's a little podcast icon with the headphones over the Joe Mull logo. Just click that and subscribe to get our podcast updates. We are creating a show for you. This is not my podcast. It's yours. This is not my weekly show. It's yours. We are going to shape the content and the experience of this show based on the boss heroes who join our movement, who become a part of the community that we're going to build around this show. And we want you to be involved in that conversation right out of the gate. So go to BossBetterNow.com, subscribe to the podcast updates, and we're going to give you some behind the scenes looks. We're going to get you to vote on some things. We're going to seek your input and feedback, and you're going to get access to the content before anybody else. Oh, and there may be prizes involved. Okay, let me tell you a little bit about what this show is going to not be. I have been encouraged to do a podcast for years from a lot of speaker friends and colleagues, from a lot of folks that have been in my audience for keynotes and training, from some of our consulting clients across the country. And I've never been called to do it. I've never been excited to do it. And the primary reason is because most podcasts, especially most podcasts in the professional development or business space, are either a solo person talking alone or an interview podcast. And I just didn't have any desire to do that. Hey, Joe has a guest and Joe interviews a guest and that's the podcast. It just never appealed to me. I hadn't ever landed on an idea for a podcast concept that got me excited until about a year ago. I was flipping through the TV stations one day and I came across a show that I used to watch a lot, but hadn't in a long time, called Pardon the Interruption, PTI, on ESPN. Now, these guys have been around for about 20 years, and they do a weekly half-hour show where they run through a series of topics, sports topics, debating the news of the day. And they have recurring bits and segments and whatnot. And I remember pausing and thinking, that's very much like the kind of show that I would want to do as a podcast if I ever decided to do a podcast. Well, folks, here we are. I've always said that if I was going to do a podcast, I would want it to be kind of like a morning drive time radio show, right? AM radio in the morning where you've got fun and energy and you've got some recurring bits. And so that's what we've built. That's what we have planned. Popping into our announcement comments here. Very exciting news, says Teresa. Carolyn says she's looking forward to it and looking forward to sharing it with her department managers. Yes, we love that. We want everybody to subscribe. So if you're going to share this with a whole department, we want everybody in that department to go to bossbetternow.com and sign up for those podcast updates so we can get everybody's voice involved in joining our movement and shaping our show. Hi, Shane. It's so nice to see you here. Just saw your comment. Hi, Michelle. Couple other things about the show. We are designing this show to be easy to consume during your workout, during your commute, when you're cooking dinner, if you're listening on your Amazon speaker, if you're traveling, if you are listening to it at lunch, at work, while you grab a quick bite. I have the attention span of a 4-year-old, which is why I don't listen to a lot of podcasts, because a lot of podcasts have episodes that are like an hour long, an hour and 20 minutes long. Who has time for that? I'll put a podcast in my ears and I'll start listening, and 5 minutes in, something that they said have sparked a thought, and then another, and then I've gone down my own mental rabbit hole. And by the time I come back to what the podcast people are saying, I'm lost. And so I always knew that if I was going to do a podcast, it needed to be so captivating, so dynamic, so fun and compelling that you can't get distracted by your own thoughts. At the same time, though, we want it to be rich. We want it to be substantive. We want it to have utility. And so this podcast is really going to mix that substance of learning how to boss better with encouragement and humor and fun, right? Our show is going to be food for the boss soul. Now, we have a couple of different ideas for segments and whatnot. In every podcast episode, we are going to tackle a big question, something related to managing people and leading teams. When we recorded our first episode, the big question that we tried to answer was, what should leaders be doing right now to support exhausted teams? Right? We're past the point of pep talks. We're past the point of we can do it together. Everybody's fried. What are we going to do now? And the conversation that took place was so robust, and I can't wait to share that with you. By the way, if you sign up for the podcast updates over at bossbetternow.com, you're going to get that segment first and before anybody else. So we've got some fun things planned for the podcast. The episodes are going to be about 30 minutes long each. So we think that that's pretty ideal for your workout, for your maybe your commute, and for where you might find time to consume it. One of the other segments that I'm really excited about on the podcast is what we are calling the camaraderie question of the week. So here's where that comes from. We know that teams that perform at a high level tend to have developed a lot of camaraderie. Camaraderie is the mutual trust and friendliness that develops between people who spend a lot of time together. And we know that camaraderie comes from people getting to find things in common with each other that don't have anything to do with work. It's how you access another person's humanity. There's a reason that teams do potlucks and picnics and try to do icebreakers and team builders, but I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Most icebreakers and team builders suck. If you go out on the internet and you're like, I want to do a little something at my huddle or staff meeting, and you start Googling and looking for a team builder, most of the stuff you're going to come across, you're going to go, in a million years, I would never do this with my team. I would never ask them that question. And so we've decided that every week we are going to give you a question that you can take to your teams that will spark dialogue between each other so that people can find things in common and develop camaraderie. And these are going to be fun questions. When we recorded our pilot episode, my co-host and I spent our time debating the great holiday movie debate of our time, which is whether or not Die Hard is a Christmas movie. And if you want to hear our take on that, well, then you're going to have to subscribe to the podcast or go to bossbetternow.com and sign up for those podcast updates, and you'll probably get that before everybody else. I'm loving some of what I'm seeing in the comments box. Keely says that 30 minutes is perfect for my commute. Hi, Lynn. Oh, and it's such a joy to have you here, too. Thank you for your kind comment there. Hi, Josh. Oh, my goodness. Josh Wood, back in the high school days, man. Good to see you. Thank you so much for being here. Now, there's something else I need to tell you about the podcast. You've heard me say we. You've heard me say our. You heard me use the word co-host. And that's right, folks. The podcast, which will be called Boss Better Now with Joe Mull, is going to have a co-host. The Robin to my Batman, if you will. And I cannot tell you how excited I am about my co-host. You see, when I decided to do a podcast, I knew a couple of things. I didn't want to sit and talk by myself because I would end up scripting the whole thing and it would become like a mini training presentation. And sometimes the best, most revelatory moments of learning occur when there's a discussion taking place and we feed ideas off each other and insights, and there are mental downloads. And I knew that that's what I wanted in my weekly show. And so I had to take a step back and ask myself, who is the person that I have just the best conversations with about this stuff? Who is the person that really gets me thinking? Who is the person that I have chemistry with? They have to be smart. They have to be funny. They have to be real. They have to be sharp. They have to be warm. They have to be friendly. They have to be worthy of you, my audience, who tends to like much of the stuff that we share. If we want to play at the highest level possible, I knew that I needed a rock star. And so I am super excited to share with you that my co-host is none other than professional coach Alyssa Mullet. Now, I don't know how well you know Alyssa, but Alyssa was previously the director of physician relations at one of the largest physician groups in the country, and nowadays is a highly regarded, sought-after professional coach. She works with executives and physicians to help them live their priority life and tackle the issues that live behind closed doors. Alyssa, in addition to being an amazing coach, is an even better human being. And I can tell you that I've lost count of the number of times that she and I have sat down together for a phone call or a Zoom meeting and started a conversation where we thought it was going to be 20 minutes and it ended up being 60. Because we ended up having these really rich conversations, and I'm so excited to share those rich conversations with you. And I'm also excited because one of the things that Alyssa and I do together when we get together is we laugh a lot. And so I'm super excited that you'll get to hear, well, among other things, our take on whether Die Hard is a Christmas movie. So Alyssa is the co-host, and I'm so excited that she has committed to do this with us. Now, we wanted to record all of our episodes in person, live in our studio here, but that is not the safest option for us right now. It's not the reality that we live in. So we will be recording virtually and packaging it all together for you in a way that you can consume it either as a podcast or as a weekly show on YouTube. And folks, Alyssa Mullet is in the comments. Say hi to Alyssa. Tell her how excited you are that she's going to be a part of this. I can't tell you how excited I am that she is going to be a part of this. Hello, Alyssa. Thank you for being my very own boss hero and continuing to find ways to show up for our audience and to contribute to all the great work that we're doing. Okay, let me go back to my list and make sure I haven't missed anything that I want to share with you. I think we got it all. So here's the thing. Do you have any questions? Now is a great time to write about them in the comments box, and I will do my very best to answer them. Any questions? Type them in now. Also, a couple of things. When the podcast launches, it's going to be the first week of January, January 3rd, 2021. When the podcast launches, I'm going to need your help. We want to invite you to be a part of something special. We want to invite you to be a part of this movement to fill the world with better bosses. There's so much at stake. Imagine what work would be like if it worked for everyone. If I came to work and my boss was invested in my experience and in my fulfillment and in my talent. And imagine if we came to work and our employees were responding to us in the ways that we know we can get them to respond so that they go out into the world and give it all they've got. This is the movement that we are building because bosses matter. And I want to invite you to be a part of that movement. So we're going to need your help when the podcast launches. When it launches, we're going to need everybody in our orbit to subscribe and review and share this podcast. We're going to be doing a podcast launch team when we get a little bit closer, so keep your eyes peeled for that. We're going to invite some of you to be our ambassadors, to really help us spread the word. And oh, by the way, there's going to be fabulous prizes. I am not at all above attempting to buy or bribe your enthusiasm for the new podcast with some really cool giveaways. So if you want to be a part of that, if you want to be a part of this movement, if you want to be a part of helping us spread the word, if you want to be a part of helping us shape our show, you got to go over to BossBetterNow.com and subscribe for the podcast updates. I am so excited to share this with you. We're going to be sharing preview segments soon. We're going to be emailing them to all of you who are deciding to tune in and follow this right from the jump. And then you can be sure that on January 3rd, 2021, when the podcast launches, we're probably going to have a kick-ass launch party. We are. There's going to be a kick-ass launch party. And so I hope you'll be a part of that. In the meantime, I cannot thank you enough for making some time to be with us today, for joining me and to hear a little bit about this podcast announcement. So please tell everyone in your orbit about this great new podcast that is coming on January 3rd called Boss Better Now with Joe Mull. It's for smart bosses like you who care deeply about becoming a better boss, but don't always know how. It's a place where you can come for encouragement, entertainment, and enlightenment. And as we said, it's food for the boss soul. So I look forward to having you with us in the audience. Be well, stay safe, and thank you for joining me for the announcement today. Take care.